Park nodded, his decision made. Take us in, helm. Maximum speed. Let's show these attackers what happens when they threaten those under humanity's protection. The Dauntless leaped forward into FTL, its powerful engines tearing a hole in space-time. They were one ship, about to face an unknown enemy of superior numbers. But throughout history, humans had often beaten impossible odds through determination, creativity, and the unwavering will to protect others. The battle for Arcturus sector was about to begin, and humanity's first major interstellar war was about to unfold. Commander Park's boots made soft thuds against the metal floor of his quarters as he paced back and forth. The room's dim lighting matched his dark mood as he studied the tactical displays floating in the air before him. Each hologram showed a different aspect of their dire situation: enemy ship positions, estimated weapons capabilities, and a growing number of destroyed Mira colonies. The Dauntless had arrived at the edge of the Arcturus sector, maintaining a safe distance while gathering intelligence. What they found had turned Park's stomach. 3 more Mira colonies had fallen in the time it took them to arrive. The enemy ships were massive, dwarfing the Dauntless in size, and their weapons technology appeared to be far beyond current human capabilities. Park pressed a button on his desk. Senior staff to my quarters immediately. His voice echoed through the ship's communication system. Within minutes, his most trusted officers filed in. Lieutenant Hannah Lee, her tactical officer's uniform crisp despite the late hour. Engineering Chief Taiwan Kim, still wearing his work coveralls stained with engine grease, and Science Officer Sun Ma Choi, carrying her ever-present datapad. Take a look. Park gestured to the holograms. These are the latest scans of the enemy fleet. Chief Kim whistled softly. Those energy readings are off the charts, sir. Their smallest ship has twice the power output of the Dauntless. And their weapons technology. Park turned to Lieutenant Lee. She stepped forward, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on one of the enemy vessels. Based on debris analysis from destroyed colonies, they're using some form of plasma-based weapons we've never encountered before. Their shields appear to be multilayered and adaptive. In simple terms, Park's voice was grim. They could tear us apart. Science Officer Choi spoke up, her quiet voice carrying weight. There's something else, sir. I've been analyzing their attack patterns. They're not just destroying infrastructure. They're systematically eliminating all traces of Mira culture. Libraries, art centers, historical archives. They're trying to erase the Mira from existence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just conquest, it was genocide. Park stopped pacing and faced his officers. I've received orders from Fleet Command. They want us to maintain observation only and wait for reinforcements. The nearest battle group is 4 days away. In 4 days, there won't be any Mira left to save, Lee said, her hands clenched at her sides. Exactly. Park looked each officer in the eye. This is why I've called you here. What I'm considering could start an interstellar war. Earth isn't ready for that. We're still recovering from our own wars, still building our fleet. If we engage this enemy, we risk bringing their full attention to human space. Chief Kim leaned against the wall, arms crossed. But if we don't help the Mira, what does that say about us? About humanity. My thoughts exactly. Park activated another hologram, showing Earth's history. Images of past wars, genocides, and atrocities floated before them. Our ancestors stood by while millions died, each time saying it wasn't their problem, it wasn't their fight. We swore we would be different. The Mira welcomed us to the stars, Choi added softly. They shared their knowledge freely, helped us establish our colonies. We owe them more than just watching them die. Lieutenant Lee stepped forward, studying the tactical displays. Sir, if we're going to fight, we need a plan. These ships are more powerful than anything we faced, but every weapon has a weakness. We just need to find it. I might have an idea about that. Chief Kim straightened up, his eyes lighting with the spark of inspiration that had made him one of the fleet's best engineers. Their shields may be stronger than ours, but they follow predictable patterns. If we could analyze those patterns. Chief Kim stepped away from his station, moving to the central tactical display. Sir, I've been studying their shield configuration. It's incredibly powerful, but also rigid, designed to withstand massive frontal assaults. Which we can't provide anyway, Lee added grimly. True. Kim's eyes lit up with that familiar engineering spark. But what about something they're not expecting? Our mining laser array was designed to cut through asteroid fields. The frequency is completely different from military weapons. Sun Mai Choi joined them at the display, her data pad scrolling with calculations. He's right, sir. Look at these readings. Their shields are programmed to deflect standard military energy signatures. The mining lasers operate on a completely different wavelength. Could it work? Park asked. Maybe, Kim said, but we'd need to get close, too close, and we have to modify the laser array for maximum power output. It might burn out our systems after one shot. Lee studied the tactical display. Their formation leaves a blind spot here. She pointed to a gap between two of the massive ships. If we time it right, we could slip through their screen before they can react. That's suicide, someone muttered from the bridge crew. Park raised his hand for silence. Your calculations, Officer Choi. What are our chances? Sun Mi's fingers flew across her pad. If we can get within 5,000 kilometers and hit them at precisely the right moment in their shield modulation cycle, 23% chance of success. Better odds than the colony has if we do nothing, Park said quietly. He straightened his uniform and faced his crew. Chief Kim, how long to modify the mining lasers? 10 minutes if we bypass all safety protocols. Do it. Lieutenant Lee, plot us an approach vector through that blind spot. Officer Choi, I want you coordinating with tactical. The instant you see that shield modulation pattern, we take the shot. The bridge erupted into activity. Warning klaxons sounded throughout the ship as engineering crews rushed to modify the mining laser array. Power was diverted from non-essential systems, leaving parts of the ship dark and cold. Enemy ships are launching fighters, Lee reported. They'd spotted us. Hold position behind the moon, Park ordered. Wait for engineering to finish the modifications. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. On the tactical display, the fighter screen spread out, searching for them. The Krell ships continued their bombardment of the surface, unworried by the presence of a single human vessel. Modifications complete, Kim's voice came over the comm. But sir, I have to warn you, we'll only get one shot at this. The power surge will probably fry half our systems. Park nodded grimly. Better make it count then. He keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Today we prove that the size of the ship matters less than the courage of its crew. The Dauntless's engines flared to life, pushing them out from behind the moon. Immediately, the Krell fighter screen turned toward them, weapons charging. Take us in, full speed, Park commanded. Auxiliary power to forward shields. Timing is everything here, people. The human warship shot forward, weaving through the oncoming fighters with remarkable agility for its size. Lee's piloting skills proved invaluable as they dodged energy blasts and missiles, closing the distance to their target. Entering optimal firing range in 15 seconds, Choi announced, her eyes fixed on the shield modulation readings. Wait for it. Wait for it. The Krell capital ships were turning ponderously to face them, their massive weapons beginning to track the approaching human vessel. Now, Choi shouted. Sun Mai looked up from her readings, eyes bright with understanding. Yes, sir. They reset to the same cycle every time they regenerate. Their technology is powerful but predictable. Lieutenant Lee, bring up the debris field analysis. The tactical display shifted, showing hundreds of pieces of destroyed colonial infrastructure floating in complex patterns. Park studied the field intently, a plan forming in his mind. Sir, Lee interjected, the Krell are moving to cut off our escape vectors. Good. Park's response drew surprised looks from his bridge crew. They think they know what we're going to do. Let's show them how humans fight when cornered. He quickly outlined his plan. The crew dubbed it the Sewell Gambit, a complex series of maneuvers using the debris field not just as cover, but as a weapon. The Dauntless would need to execute precise movements while timing their shots perfectly with the Krell shield cycles. It's insane, Lee said, then smiled. They'll never expect it. Park keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, secure for extreme maneuvers. Engineering, I need everything you can give the engines. This is going to get rough. The Dauntless's engines flared to life as Lee took them into the debris field at full speed. Pieces of destroyed platforms and satellites whirled around them as she threaded the ship through impossibly tight gaps. The Krell ships followed, their bulk making them slower to maneuver. First target approaching optimal firing position. Sun Mai reported, monitoring the shield cycles. 15 seconds to synchronization. Park watched as the nearest Krell ship grew larger on their view screen. They were so close they could see individual weapon emplacements on its hull. Prepare for attack pattern Delta. Engineering, status of the mining lasers. Barely holding together, sir, Kim replied. But they'll fire. The Dauntless suddenly cut its engines, using the debris field's gravity to swing around in a slingshot maneuver. The move brought them up underneath the first Krell ship, just as its shields entered the vulnerable part of their cycle. Fire. The modified mining lasers struck true, slicing through the weakened shields and cutting deep into the enemy vessel's power core. The massive ship erupted in a series of explosions, its hull breaking apart. But there was no time to celebrate. The second Krell ship was already adjusting its position, bringing its main weapons to bear. The Dauntless dove through the expanding cloud of debris from the destroyed vessel, using it as cover. Shield cycle data on the second target locked. Sun Mai called out. Same pattern. Lee executed another series of tight maneuvers, using pieces of debris to screen their approach. The Krell ship fired repeatedly, but its powerful weapons were designed for large targets, not the agile Dauntless weaving through the chaos. The human ship emerged from the debris field directly above the enemy vessel. Their mining lasers fired again, catching the Krell ship at its most vulnerable moment. The results were devastating. Its entire weapons array exploded, leaving the massive ship crippled. The third and final Krell vessel, witnessing the destruction of its companions, suddenly turned to flee. But Park had anticipated this reaction. The Dauntless was already moving to cut off its escape route, positioning itself perfectly for a precision strike on the enemy's engines. One more shot, Park said calmly. Make it count. The mining lasers fired one last time, their energy beams striking the Krell ship's engine housing just as its shields cycled. The massive vessel's propulsion systems exploded, leaving it dead in space. Silence fell over the Dauntless's bridge as the crew realized what they had accomplished. 3 enemy ships, each many times their size and technological capability, had been defeated through human ingenuity and courage. Send to Fleet Command, Park ordered, allowing himself a small smile. The Krell are not invincible. Repeat, the Krell are not invincible. As damage control teams rushed to repair their battered ship, the crew of the Dauntless knew they had just changed the course of the war. They had proven that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior strength or technology, but from the willingness to try the impossible. The battle that would become known as the Sewell Gambit marked the beginning of humanity's rise as a major power in the galaxy. But for the exhausted crew of the Dauntless, it was simply proof of what they had always believed, that courage, creativity, and determination could overcome any odds. Subspace communications lit up across the galaxy as news of the impossible victory spread. The UES Dauntless, still bearing scorch marks and hastily patched hull breaches from its battle with the Krell, maintained position above the saved Miran colony. Engineering teams worked around the clock to repair the damage, while Commander Park spent hours sending detailed reports of their encounter back to Fleet Command. Sir, you need to see this, Lieutenant Lee called out from her station. She brought up the long-range sensor display, showing multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system. Park straightened in his command chair, muscles tense. Identity. First group appears to be Astra vessels, Lee reported, her eyes widening. 3 of them. And behind them. Sir, I'm reading Nor bioships. At least 5. The bridge crew watched in amazement as more ships continued to arrive. The Astra vessels were beautiful things, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight like massive diamonds. The Nor ships were equally impressive, but completely different. Organic vessels that looked more like space-going whales than conventional spacecraft. We're receiving transmission requests from both fleets, Communications Officer Baiho announced. They're asking permission to approach. Park nodded. Put them through to the main screen. The view screen split, showing 2 very different alien commanders. The Astra captain was a crystalline being whose faceted surface shimmered with internal light. The Nor leader was a graceful, almost ethereal creature floating in what appeared to be a living command center. Commander Park, the Astra captain's translated voice rang like chimes. Word of your victory over the Krell has reached our worlds. We come seeking alliance. Our people too have suffered Krell attacks, the Nor leader added, their bioluminescent patterns shifting with emotion. Until now, we thought resistance was futile. But you have shown us otherwise. More ships continued to arrive. Refugee vessels from dozens of species, each bearing stories of Krell aggression. Park found himself organizing emergency meetings with alien captains in the Dauntless's conference room, now crowded with beings of all shapes and sizes. The mining laser strategy won't work again, Park explained, showing tactical displays of their battle. The Krell will have adapted. But the principle remains the same. They're predictable. Their strength is their weakness. An Astra captain raised a crystalline appendage. Our ships can generate focused light beams of immense power, but we never considered using them as weapons. Our bioships can produce electromagnetic pulses, a Nor commander added. Perhaps, if coordinated correctly. Park watched as the alien leaders began sharing ideas, centuries of peaceful existence giving way to the necessity of war. The Dauntless's tactical room became a laboratory of innovation as different species combined their technologies in ways never before imagined. Sir, Lee approached Park during a brief break. Fleet Command has responded to our reports. They're sending reinforcements, but it will take weeks for them to arrive. Park looked out at the growing fleet of alien vessels surrounding the Dauntless. Perhaps that's for the best, Lieutenant. This isn't just humanity's fight anymore. Training exercises began almost immediately. The Dauntless led mixed groups of ships through combat drills, teaching Earth military tactics while learning the unique capabilities of each species. The Astra crystal ships proved incredibly effective at focusing and amplifying energy weapons. The Nor bioships could generate massive electromagnetic fields that disrupted enemy systems. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. On the main viewer, waves of Krell fighters moved to intercept them, their weapons charging. The 3 massive dreadnoughts began to turn ponderously, bringing their main guns to bear. Modifications complete. Kim's voice crackled over the comm. But sir, the power levels are barely stable. We'll get one shot before the whole system melts down. Park nodded grimly. Then we make it count. He keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, battle stations. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. The Mira welcomed humanity to the stars. Today we repay that debt. The Dauntless's engines flared to life, pushing the ship forward into what looked like certain death. Enemy fighters opened fire, their energy weapons splashing against the human vessel's shields. Entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Lee announced, her hands flying over the helm controls as she weaved through the incoming fire. Shield modulation pattern identified. Sunmei called out. Time to synchronization. 20 seconds. Park watched as they closed the distance, the massive bulk of the nearest Krell ship filling their view screen. At this range, the difference in size between the vessels was staggering. The Dauntless was literally charging into the shadow of a giant. 10 seconds. Enemy fire intensified. A hit rocked the ship, causing sparks to fly from overloaded consoles. 5 seconds. The modified mining laser array hummed with power, drawing energy directly from the ship's reactor core. Now, the Dauntless fired, its makeshift weapon lancing out with unexpected brilliance. For a fraction of a second, the beam met the Krell ship's shields, and then punched through them as if they weren't there, slicing deep into the enemy vessel's hull. Secondary explosions bloomed along the Krell ship's length as its power systems overloaded. The mighty vessel began to list, venting atmosphere and debris into space. On the Dauntless's bridge, systems were failing as the power surge burned out circuits and overloaded conduits. But through the smoke and chaos, Commander Park allowed himself a tight smile. Sometimes the smallest stone, properly aimed, could bring down the mightiest giant. Alarm klaxons wailed through the smoke-filled bridge of the Dauntless as Commander Park studied the tactical display. Their first strike had proven the mining lasers could penetrate Krell shields, but they'd lost the element of surprise. 2 more massive enemy ships remained, and the Dauntless's makeshift weapon system was rapidly overheating. "Damage report," Park called out, steadying himself as another blast rocked the ship. "Shields at 40%. Lieutenant Lee responded, her fingers dancing across multiple control interfaces. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Emergency containment holding." Chief Kim's voice crackled over the comm, distorted by static. "The mining laser array is critical, sir. Coolant systems are failing. We need at least 10 minutes to prevent a complete burnout." Park watched as the 2 remaining Krell ships moved to flank them, their massive weapons charging. The Dauntless was badly outgunned, but the debris field from the destroyed colony platforms offered possibilities. "Officer Sunmai, do those shield modulation patterns remain consistent after each hit?" "The key is coordination," Park explained during a fleet-wide briefing. "The Krell expect us to fight as individuals. Instead, we combine our strengths. When they adapt to one attack, we switch to another. Keep them off balance." The improvised alliance grew stronger each day. Engineers from different species worked together to improve their technologies. The Moran colony became a bustling center of activity as more ships arrived, drawn by the promise of effective resistance against the Krell. Park stood on the Dauntless's observation deck, watching as an Astra crystal ship performed precision maneuvers alongside a Nor bioship. The sight would have been unimaginable just weeks ago. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Science officer Sun Mi joined him at the window. "They're learning faster than we expected." "Necessity is a powerful teacher," Park replied. "And hope is an even stronger motivation." A sudden alert drew their attention. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Krell fleet moving toward a nearby sector. This would be the first real test of their new alliance. Park keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, battle stations. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Together, we are stronger than any empire." As the combined fleet moved into formation around the Dauntless, Park allowed himself a moment of pride. Humanity had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship. Instead, they had found a war. But in fighting that war, they had achieved something even greater: unity among the stars. The real battle was about to begin. But this time, the Krell wouldn't face a single ship fighting against impossible odds. They would face the combined strength of a dozen species, each bringing their own unique gifts to the fight. And at the center of it all, the scared but unbowed Dauntless led the way, a symbol of hope for all those who dared to resist. The void of the Deneb sector blazed with weapons fire as 2 massive fleets faced each other across the darkness of space. On one side, the rigid formations of the Krell Armada, hundreds of massive warships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. On the other, the more fluid lines of the Allied fleet, ships of different species moving in coordinated chaos around the battle-scarred form of the UES Dauntless. All ships, battle positions. Commander Park's voice carried across the combined fleet's communication channels. Remember your training. Remember what we fight for. The Krell struck first, their massive ships launching a wall of energy weapons that lit up space like a newborn sun. But the Allied fleet was ready. The crystalline Astra vessels moved forward, their faceted hulls catching and dispersing the enemy fire, while Noor bioships pulsed with electromagnetic countermeasures. Initial Krell attack pattern identified. Lieutenant Lee reported from her tactical station. Just as we predicted, they're still using standard combat algorithms. Park nodded grimly. Execute attack pattern Delta. All ships, follow your assigned groups. The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. Astra ships focused and amplified the Noor's electromagnetic pulses, creating corridors of disrupted space through which smaller vessels could strike. The Dauntless led these attack runs, coordinating the precise timing needed to penetrate Krell defenses. Hour after hour, the fighting continued. The Allies lost ships, good crews, and brave captains falling to overwhelming Krell firepower. But for every Allied vessel destroyed, they claimed 2 or 3 enemy ships in return. The Krell's superior technology meant nothing against the combined creativity of a dozen species fighting for survival. Engineering to bridge. Chief Kim's voice crackled through the ship's comm. Commander, we finished the modifications to the Allied weapon systems. We're ready for Phase 2. Park studied the tactical display, watching as another wave of Krell ships moved to engage them. All ships, fall back to secondary positions. Prepare for synchronized strike. The Allied fleet executed a fighting retreat, drawing the Krell deeper into the sector. Kim's engineering teams had spent weeks working with alien technicians, helping them modify their weapons to exploit the fundamental weakness in Krell shield technology. Enemy fleet advancing, Lee reported. They think we're running. Let them think that, Park replied. Wait for my mark. The Krell pressed their advantage, their massive ships moving faster as they sensed victory. That was their mistake. The Allies had learned that Krell shields were weakest when their ships were at full acceleration, a tiny flaw in an otherwise perfect design. All ships, stand by, Park ordered. Target their lead vessels. Fire on my command. The Krell closed the distance, their weapons charging for what they thought would be a killing blow. Instead, they flew straight into a trap. Now, the Allied fleet struck as one. Astra crystal ships focused their energy beams, while Noor vessels released precisely timed electromagnetic pulses. The Dauntless and other combat vessels fired their modified weapons directly into the gaps this created. The effect was devastating. Krell shields failed across their front line. Ships that had seemed invincible mere weeks ago now broke apart under the combined assault. The perfect formation of the Krell fleet began to crack. It's working, Lee exclaimed. Their shields can't adapt fast enough to multiple attack types. But the Krell were far from defeated. They responded with overwhelming force, their remaining ships concentrating fire on any Allied vessel that showed weakness. The space around the fleets became a graveyard of broken ships and frozen debris. For 3 days the battle raged. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. The Allies' superior tactics were matched against the Krell's superior technology. Ships were lost and replaced on both sides as reinforcements arrived to join the largest space battle in known history. The turning point came during a lull in the fighting. Chief Kim noticed something in the sensor readings, a pattern in how the Krell ships coordinated their shield frequencies. Commander, he called from engineering, his voice excited despite his exhaustion. I think I've found it. Their entire fleet, they synchronized their shields through their flagship. If we can disrupt that signal. Park immediately understood the implications. Lieutenant Lee, get me the Allied commanders. Everyone gets the data from engineering. We hit their flagship with everything we have. The final assault was precisely coordinated. Noor bioships created a massive electromagnetic disturbance, while Astra vessels amplified it to unprecedented levels. The Dauntless led a strike force of the fastest Allied ships straight for the Krell flagship, their modified weapons primed. The massive Krell vessel never stood a chance against the combined assault. As it broke apart, its destruction sent a cascade of shield failures through the enemy fleet. For the first time, the mighty Krell armada showed fear. "They're breaking formation," Lee reported, her voice thick with disbelief. "The Krell, they're retreating." The bridge crew watched in amazement as the remaining Krell ships turned and fled, their perfect formations shattered. After 3 days of continuous battle, the Allies had achieved what no single species thought possible: victory over the Krell. Park slumped in his command chair, feeling the weight of days without sleep. "Send to all ships. Well done. Stand down to repair status. The Deneb sector is secure." As damage reports began coming in and medical ships moved to assist the wounded, Park looked out at the mixed fleet of alien vessels surrounding his ship. The battle had proved something remarkable: that different species, working together, could achieve the impossible. The storm had passed, and a new day was dawning for the galaxy. The stars shone with renewed brilliance over the rebuilt Muran colony as the UES Dauntless glided through its patrol route. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Deneb Sector, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Where once independent species lived in isolation, now a thriving coalition of worlds worked together, their ships flying joint missions across formerly dangerous space. Commander Park stood on the Dauntless's observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the constant flow of traffic around the sector's new command center. Vessels of all shapes and sizes moved in perfect harmony, crystalline astroships reflecting starlight beside the organic curves of newer vessels, while other alien craft he still couldn't name joined in the dance. The door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Lieutenant Lee entered, carrying her usual stack of data pads. But even she paused at the view, her professional demeanor softening as an Astra patrol ship performed a graceful turn that sent rainbow reflections across the deck. "The defense network is fully operational," she reported, finally tearing her eyes away from the window. "All sectors reporting normal activity. The Krell haven't been detected outside their borders since Deneb."